I always like the night shift. There's a certain silence to it, a kind of hush that settles over the gas station after midnight. The world outside the glass doors turns soft and blurry, headlights drifting by like ghosts. The hum of the fluorescent lights overhead, the only real sound. Most people would call it lonely, but I never minded. I prefer it, actually. Fewer distractions. More time to think. The station sits at the edge of town, just past the last traffic light, where the highway curves into the woods. It's the kind of place people only stop at if they have to. Truckers, drunks, the occasional lost tourist. I see all kinds, but they never see me. Not really. They look right through me, like I'm part of the furniture. That's fine. It's better that way. I keep the place clean. I know where everything is, down to the last pack of gum. I notice when things are out of place. That's why, a few weeks ago, I started to get this feeling. Like something was off. It was small things at first. A box of candy bars turned the wrong way. A mop handle leaning against the wall instead of in the closet. The bathroom door just barely ajar when I was sure I'd closed it. I told myself it was nothing. Maybe I was tired. Maybe I'd forgotten. But the feeling wouldn't go away. It was like a draft, cold and constant, brushing the back of my neck. I started checking the security cameras more often, rewinding the footage, looking for anything unusual. But the screens just showed the same empty aisles, the same flickering lights, the same me, moving through the store like a shadow. One night around 3 a.m., I heard a noise above me, a soft scraping sound, like something shifting in the ceiling. I froze, listening. It stopped as soon as I noticed it. I waited, holding my breath, but nothing happened. I told myself it was just the building settling, or maybe a raccoon on the roof. But I knew better. I always know when I'm being watched. I started paying closer attention. I found a tiny hole in the ceiling tile above the register, no bigger than a pencil eraser. If you stood in just the right spot, you could see the whole front of the store. I ran my finger around the edge of the hole, feeling the rough plaster, the dust. I looked up, but all I saw was darkness. That's when I realized someone had been up there, watching me, watching all of us. For how long I couldn't say, but I knew what it felt like to be invisible, to move through the world unseen. I wondered if they felt the same way. I didn't tell anyone. There's no one to tell. The manager barely comes in, and the other employees don't last long. They quit after a few weeks, say the place gives them the creeps. I can't blame them. There's something about the way the lights buzz, the way the shadows pool in the corners. It gets under your skin. But I'm not afraid. I've seen worse things than a hole in the ceiling. I've done worse things. The night hides a lot if you know how to use it. And I do. I started leaving little tests for whoever was up there. Nothing obvious, just a candy wrapper placed on the edge of the counter, a pen balanced on the bathroom sink, a receipt folded a certain way and tucked behind the register. Each night I checked to see if anything had moved. Sometimes it had, sometimes it hadn't. It was like playing chess with a ghost. I began to notice other things too. The faintest trace of muddy footprints in the back hallway, where customers never go. A whiff of sweat and something sour drifting down from the vents. Once I found a single black hair on the break room table. I don't have black hair. Neither did the last girl who worked here, the one who stopped showing up after her last shift. People come and go. That's the way it is out here. I started sleeping less. I'd sit behind the counter, eyes fixed on the ceiling, waiting for a sign. Sometimes I'd catch a flicker of movement in the corner of my eye, a shadow shifting behind the tiles. I'd stand on a chair and press my ear to the plaster, listening for breathing. Sometimes I thought I heard it, slow, steady, patient. I wondered what they wanted. Maybe they were just watching. Maybe they were waiting for the right moment to come down. I understood that kind of patience. I've waited before too. Sometimes you have to if you want things to go your way. One night I found the hatch to the crawl space slightly open. Just a crack, barely enough to notice unless you were looking for it. I stood there for a long time, staring up into the darkness. I thought about calling the police, but what would I say? That I heard noises? That I found a hole in the ceiling? They'd laugh, or worse, they'd start asking questions. I don't like questions. Instead, I went back to the counter and waited. The hours dragged by, slow and heavy. I watched the monitors, but nothing moved. The only sound was the hum of the lights and the distant rush of cars on the highway. I felt calm, almost peaceful. I've always liked the quiet before something happens. When the sun started to rise, I locked up and went home. I slept with the window open, letting the morning air wash over me. I dreamed of empty roads and headlights, of faces I couldn't quite remember. When I woke up, I felt lighter, like something had shifted. The next night, I brought a flashlight and a knife, just in case. I told myself it was for protection, but I knew better. I've always been good at finding people who don't want to be found. I've always been good at making them disappear. I waited until the station was empty, the last customer's taillights fading into the trees. Then I killed the lights and stood in the dark listening. The silence pressed in, thick and expectant. I could hear my own breathing, slow and steady, and something else, a faint scuffle above me, like knees shifting on insulation. I moved quietly, careful not to let the floorboards creak. I knew every inch of this place, every hiding spot, every blind corner. I'd made a habit of it. I slipped into the back room, flashlight in one hand, knife in the other. The hatch to the crawl space was still ajar, just enough to let a sliver of blackness spill out. I stood beneath it, heart beating slow and even. I shone the light up, catching a glimpse of dust swirling in the beam. For a moment, I thought I saw an eye staring back at me, but it vanished as quickly as it appeared. I smiled. Whoever was up there, they were careful, almost as careful as me. I left the hatch open that night, a silent invitation. I wanted to see what they'd do. I wanted to see if they'd come down or if they'd stay hidden, watching. I went back to the counter and waited, pretending to read a magazine, but my eyes never left the security monitors. Hours passed, nothing happened. But when I went to the bathroom at the end of my shift, I found the mirror fogged up, a single word traced in the condensation. Soon. My reflection looked back at me, pale and grinning. I wiped the word away, but the feeling lingered, something electric, crawling under my skin. I started to wonder if maybe I'd underestimated them. Maybe they were watching me as closely as I was watching them. Maybe they knew more than I thought. I liked the challenge. It made things interesting. The next night, I set another trap. I left the back door unlocked, just a crack, and sprinkled flour on the floor inside. I wanted to see footprints to know for sure. I waited in the dark, knife in my lap, listening to the building breathe. Around 2 a.m., I heard the door creak. Soft footsteps, careful and deliberate, moving through the storeroom. I held my breath, every muscle tensed. The footsteps stopped just outside the office. I could feel them there, on the other side of the door, waiting. I opened the door fast, flashlight beam slicing through the dark. The room was empty. The flour was undisturbed. But I could smell it. Sweat, fear, something animal. I knew they were close. I could almost taste it. I went back to my post, but I didn't sit down. I stood behind the counter, watching the ceiling, waiting for the next move. The game wasn't over. Not yet. I didn't sleep that day. I lay on my bed, staring at the ceiling, replaying every detail in my mind. The word on the mirror, the smell in the air, the way the flour remained untouched. It was almost perfect. Almost. I knew I was close. I could feel it, like the moment before a storm breaks. That night, I arrived early. I checked every inch of the station, every lock, every camera angle. I even climbed onto the roof, searching for any sign of entry. Nothing. Whoever was up there, they were careful. But I was patient. I'd waited before, and I could wait again. The hours crawled by. Midnight came and went. I sat behind the counter, eyes fixed on the monitors, listening to the hum of the lights. I thought about the others who'd worked here before me, their nervous glances, the way they'd jump at every sound. They never lasted long. Some of them just stopped showing up. People always assumed they found better jobs, moved away, started over. No one ever asked too many questions. Around 3 a.m., I heard it again. A soft, deliberate scraping above me. I stood, moving quietly to the back room. The hatch was wide open now, swinging gently on its hinges. I felt a thrill run through me. This was it, The moment I'd been waiting for. I climbed onto a chair and pulled myself up into the crawl space. The air was thick with dust and the smell of old insulation. I crawled forward, flashlight sweeping over piles of discarded wrappers, empty water bottles, a nest of dirty blankets. And then I saw it, a small notebook, pages covered in cramped handwriting. I flipped through it, recognizing names, dates, descriptions of people who'd worked here. My name was there too, underlined again and again. Suddenly a beam of light blinded me. I froze, heart pounding, as a voice echoed up from below. "Don't move! Police!" The word hit at me like a punch. I tried to back away, but strong hands grabbed my ankles, pulling me down into the blinding light. They cuffed me on the sticky linoleum, my face pressed to the cold floor. I heard voices. Officers, radios crackling, the manager's shaky words. They'd been watching me for weeks, maybe months. The person in the crawl space wasn't a drifter or a vagrant. It was a detective, gathering evidence, waiting for me to slip up. As they dragged me outside, the sun was just starting to rise, painting the sky in pale pink and gold. I didn't struggle. I didn't speak. I just watched the world through the glass doors one last time. The station shrinking behind me, the silence finally broken. They say the night hides a lot, if you know how to use it, but it never hides everything. Not forever. The ride to the station was quiet. I watched the world pass by through the back window of the cruiser, the empty highway stretching out behind us, the gas station receding into the morning haze. I could see my own reflection in the glass, calm, almost curious. The officers didn't speak to me. They kept their eyes forward, hands tight on the wheel, as if afraid I might say something that would stick with them. At the station, they led me down a hallway that smelled of old coffee and bleach. They took my fingerprints, my shoes, the contents of my pockets. I sat in a small room with a metal table and a single chair, the walls painted a dull, institutional gray. The detective who'd been living above me came in, his face drawn and tired. He set the notebook on the table between us, flipping it open to a page with my name at the top. He started asking questions about the missing employees, about the nights I'd worked alone, about the things I'd seen and done. I answered some, ignored others. I watched his hands as he turned the pages, the way his fingers trembled just a little. He was good, but not perfect. No one is. They showed me photos, faces I recognized, faces I'd watched disappear into the dark. They wanted me to explain, to confess, to give them something they could use. I said nothing. There was nothing left to say. The evidence was enough. The notebook, the cameras, the stories of people who'd vanished without a trace. They had what they needed. Days passed. I saw the world through glass and bars, the sky a thin strip above the yard. The other inmates kept their distance. Maybe they sensed something, or maybe they just didn't care. It didn't matter. I'd always been good at being alone. Sometimes, late at night, I'd hear footsteps in the hallway outside my cell. I'd lie awake, listening to the echoes, the way the sound bounced off the concrete walls. I wondered if someone was watching me now, peering through a hole in the ceiling, waiting for me to make a move. The thought made me smile. I never saw the gas station again. I heard it closed down, boarded up, the windows covered in plywood. People said it was cursed, that bad things happened there. Maybe they were right. Maybe some places just attract darkness, the way a porch light draws in moths. In the end, it didn't matter what I thought, or what I'd done. The world kept turning, the night kept falling, and I was left with nothing but the silence and the memory of fluorescent lights buzzing overhead. The game was over. The night had finally given me up.